But the challenge that we come up on is that content teams are pulled in different directions. And so we don't have enough resources to meet the expectations that we have. And there's a ton of other forces at play that are distracting the content team. So we have cross-department demands that drive our own roadmap. There might be an item that comes from, let's say, an M&A transaction that we now need to draft resources or emails to customers around. There might be urgent deadlines. Maybe there's a new feature release that is now entered our roadmap where we need a blog post explaining how that feature release needs will help customers do better. Or maybe there's a pricing increase and we need to communicate that to customers. Then there are additionally demand gen targets or campaigns that we need to support. Like, let's say the paid media team is launching paid social campaigns and they need certain assets to run those campaigns. Maybe it's a landing page, maybe it's a white paper or downloadable, maybe it's a webinar. So we need to build those. And then we run into this problem where, because there aren't enough team members or budget, we kind of don't have enough time to work on all of these things. And so what ends up happening is content teams, instead of focusing on these right 3 items, which is where a ton of value can be created, ultimately revenue growth is going to come from the fact that, are we supporting enough demand gen programs, and are there enough content resources in place to convert people into becoming customers or driving more revenue from them? And if we don't have the resources for that, that's not going to happen. Or if we don't have enough budget, that's not going to happen. And so what ends up happening instead is we're focusing on these 2 items. So some examples would be if there's a new product launch or an upcoming event, it's all hands on deck on content, and that's what we're working on instead of all these other items. And so the result ends up becoming is that content is a support function. It's often viewed as a cost center more than a revenue generator. And the content team is primarily reactive. And this is what we want to avoid at all costs, where there's no clear strategy, there's no framework for prioritization, and there's no mechanism for scaling impact. And so what we want is we want the opposite of this. We want a content team that is proactive, has a clear strategy. There is a ruthless form of prioritization. And I would say this is one of the biggest mistakes made by content teams is there's no framework in place to say no. So if sales needs another 1-pager, should that actually be our priority, or is there something else more important that we can now say no to these people as well? And then the last part is that if we have no mechanism for scaling impact or no way of measuring how we are doing, then getting additional budget that helps us scale our impact becomes difficult. And so we need this in order to have more content marketers on the team so that we can produce more assets and actually make a bigger impact on the overall growth of the organization. And so how do we fix this? Number one is we need to prioritize the efforts on content by tying priorities to the overall company strategy. This is actually my LinkedIn post from today, if you've seen the drawing. But the idea is that our functional strategy for content should be informed by our overall department strategy for marketing, which should be defined by the overall company strategy. It should not be the other way around. And a lot of content teams get stuck in this siloed trap of starting with their functional strategy. So for example, if I'm a content marketer and I see opportunity in SEO, I could be doing a great job in SEO and I may have even increased top of funnel traffic by, let's say, 5,000 or 10,000 visitors over a 12-month span. But if in that time, the number one company strategy is actually cross-sell, upsell, and that's where the biggest levers are, this function has actually failed its job. And so what we want to do is we actually want to understand what are the top level items at the company level and work our way down to the content strategy instead of the other way around. Even if there are some good opportunities available, we are going to have to say no to those things so that we are all aligned with the overall business and not siloed as a function. That also increases our odds of getting more budget long-term, because if, let's say, we were to start with the SEO strategy where cross-sell, upsell was a priority, and we end up at a board meeting at the end of the year, it'll turn out that we've missed our targets on cross-sell, upsell, which were probably significant, but we've done well with SEO. But because SEO was not as core to what we needed to do, it's now hard to lobby for additional budget to say we need more money for content because we made so much of an impact, because actually we didn't do what we were supposed to do.